Hi, I'm Claire, and today I'm talking about Claire Gallagher in the symbolic frame for my personal framing statement. So, in class, we learned that frames are different lenses that leaders use to look at their surroundings, whether it be through people or situations. So, in class, we learned that there are four different types of frames: there's structural, political, human resources, and symbolic. So, structural focuses on goals, roles, and specifics, and a benefit for this is that you have a strategy for getting things done. It also relates to the concept of the machine, and the machine is basically how certain roles and certain responsibilities can form into one organization that focuses on clarity, efficiency, and stability. So, in the political frame, it focuses on power, assertiveness, and conflict. And the benefit is that you know how to overcome conflict and that you can share your opinions. For the human resources frame, it focuses on caring for the individual and their feelings. And a benefit is that it improves teamwork and it provides a safe work environment. For the symbolic frame, it focuses on culture, meaning, and togetherness, and it provides a strong sense of community and it inspires coworkers. So it's very important to know all these four frames, but it's also important not to get sucked into one specifically, which is why we have reframing. And reframing is looking at something through a different lens than what you're used to, and it helps you see things through all different perspectives and make solutions based off of that. So, an example of reframing is saying that you're a team leader and you have a team member named Julie that keeps missing her deadlines and it's delaying the whole project. So, if you're thinking structurally, you're thinking that she doesn't have clear timelines and that the work was assigned too informally. If you're thinking in the human resources frame, you're thinking that she's overwhelmed and doesn't feel comfortable to ask for help. If you're thinking in the political frame, that you're thinking that another team member is giving her false tasks and people are fighting over the influence over the project and she's stuck in the middle. But if you're thinking in symbolic frame, you're thinking that she doesn't feel connected to the project and she feels like an outsider. So, all of these opinions and frames might be true, but you never know if you don't know your team's frames as well, which is why I think it's important to know yourself and your team's frames so you don't jump to conclusions. So, my personal frame I fall under is symbolic, and I mainly lead with symbolic, but I have ideals that align with human resources as well. So, knowing these, I can know my strengths and weaknesses. And my strengths are storytelling. I can have a strong sense of culture and I can motivate people easily using positivity and passion. But my weaknesses are that I'm not good with conflict and I miss details easily because I can't pay attention for long periods of time. So knowing these about myself, I can also learn how I connect with others, and I connect with others by looking for personal connections and friendship, and I connect with others through shared purpose and always trying to include everyone always. So knowing these about myself also, I can learn how I make decisions. So outside of work, I make decisions based off feelings and how other people will be affected as well, which is mainly the human resource frame. But inside of work, I pick the choice that makes the most logical sense for the team, which is the structural frame. So even though I do lead with symbolic, I do have aspects of other frames as well. So, knowing these frames is very important because it helps me know myself better. It helps me learn how to deal with different people and become more flexible. But it's also important that I don't focus too much on the frame that I'm comfortable in, which is why we have reframing. So, if I'm reframing from a symbolic frame and I'm thinking structurally, and my team is confused on roles and deadlines, I have to create those roles and deadlines and explain things in detail. If I'm thinking in a political frame and my team is at competition for aspects and they're disagreeing, I have to be strategic about who I talk to and I can't avoid that conflict. If I'm thinking about human resources and my team members are stressed out and low in morale, I have to focus on listening and create a safe and supportive environment for them. So, knowing these all personally about myself, it helps me understand organizations as a whole. So, learning about these frames gives me a full picture to how organizations work and it also helps you understand why people are behaving the way that they do. I also think it's important to note that frames can't survive on their own and that they all must work together in order for an organization to survive. So specifically, I'm talking about the symbolic frame and the structural frame. So in the symbolic frame, culture is valued very heavily. So in this picture, you can see that there are different strengths of culture, and some of them have shared values and shared norms. Some of them have no shared values and no norms. Some of them have shared values and not in different norms. But I overall think that it's important for leaders to understand this because they can know if they have to build the culture or if they just have a shared value that everyone can agree on, and it can also help you understand how to communicate with different cultures that have different norms. So, if you're thinking in the structural frame and you're thinking of different structures, you have differentiation and integration. So, differentiation focuses on jobs and routines, and it makes the teams become more specialized in their focus. But integration is focusing on coordination and collaboration, and it makes the workers work as a whole unit. So, focusing on understanding organizations as a whole, you can narrow it down to how they deal with conflict. So, I think balance is key when thinking about dealing with conflicting frames, and specifically you can think about the stages of team development and storming. So, in the stages of team development, you have pre-stage forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And specifically, storming is where all the conflict happens, which I think is why it's so important to look at the different frames so you can get past the storming part. If you're also thinking about team dimensions, you can think about balancing needs and wants in order to reduce conflict. There are four different kinds of team dimensions. There's methods, environment, trust, and action. And methods is focused on effective work processes and clear roles. Environment is focused on purpose and culture. Trust is focused on respect for others and honesty, and action is focused on clear roles, clear goals, and healthy task conflict. So balancing these are very important because if you're thinking of human resources, you're thinking harmony and support, but if you're thinking political, you're thinking speed and accountability. So leaders have to balance having kindness versus having standards. If you're thinking structurally, you're thinking structure, rules, and schedules. But if you're thinking symbolically, you're thinking flexibility, creativity, and connection. So leaders have to balance having enough structure without neglecting collaboration and creativity. So, me personally, I think the most critical one is symbolic because I think that you can throw in all the rules and deadlines as you want, but if the people don't get along or if they don't enjoy the working in that project, they won't be putting their best foot forward. And I think the most challenging one is the political frame because me personally, I avoid conflict at all costs, and I think it's very uncomfortable to be in a situation that I'm not used to. So that's why I think political frame is the most conflicting. So, overall, knowing your frames is very crucial for learning about yourself and organizations. Focus on their decisions, interactions, comfortability, and the structure, but it's also important to not get stuck into one, which is why reframing is so important. So, here is my works cited, and that's all I have. So, thank you very much for listening.